I have watched enough Hallmark Christmas movies to know that yes, miracles do happen. At the end, these two people who probably should not have been together, at the very end of the movie, find their way together against all odds. And it begins to snow as they kiss. Miracle. So miracles, of course, do happen. According to David Hume, do miracles happen? Well, obviously, if you read the part out of the Enlightenment Reader, if you watch the video, it's very clear, no. But now let me be clear about this. This is not Hume saying there's no such thing as God, so there's no such thing as a miracle. That's not it at all. In fact, let me just take on the role of Hume for a second, and you say, I think miracles happen. Hume's going to say, then you don't believe in God. If you think miracles happen, you don't believe in God. And here's why. Because God is perfect. God made a perfect world. So if he made a perfect world, why would he interfere? Remember, this goes back to our idea of a clockwork universe. God made the clock. If God has to get involved to start tinkering around with that clock, he made an imperfect clock. And now you're saying God's not God. That's going to be Hume's argument about this whole thing. God made a perfect world, so he just won't interfere. So what about these things we can't explain? Like, for example, Moses parting the Red Sea, or it's starting to snow at the end of the movie when the two stars of the show kiss. Or someone gets sick and then they are healed after we pray for them. Are these miracles? And the answer for him is no. Unexplained things can be explained with reason. Just because you don't know the answer doesn't mean it's a miracle. It's not supernatural. God's not going to get involved, so don't look there. So if something happened, it happened because of natural reasons. So don't just say magic or poof, who knows what happened. So there's some questions that are raised by this. If you buy Hume's argument, and even if you don't buy Hume's argument, what we do know is that this idea starts to become a little stronger as time goes on. By the 1800s, people still believe in God. They're just less big on the miracle side of things. Even today, we don't usually say that's a miracle unless it's something really big, like someone had cancer and now they don't have cancer. Miracle. We don't usually, start using miracle for other things like that. So the question becomes, what is prayer in a world that God doesn't interfere with? If I pray and say, dear God, please help my friend who is sick. Can you heal my friend who is sick? Well, what does that prayer sort of mean? A prayer of what we call a supplication. What does that even mean in a world that God doesn't interfere with? That changes the way that people see their role, their interaction with God. To the extent that you buy this, it changes the way you see your interaction with God. It doesn't make God any less God. In fact, for Hume's view, it makes God more God than it did before. What should Christian charity mean in a world like that? If God made this perfect world and people are suffering in it, then what exactly is the role of Christian charity in this? Obviously, Wesley had a vision of that. Other people have a vision of that that's not quite so what we might call charitable from our position. It's a tricky conversation to have. In fact, as capitalism takes over a little bit more, it becomes this sort of thing of anybody who is not doing well in capitalism clearly is not doing a very good job with God. They're not sort of following the rules of God, because capitalism is the rules of God. And so it's only right that they suffer for being poor. This will even get to today. We talk about this, a prosperity theology, which is if you're rich, it's because God is blessing you. Not necessarily intervening in the world per se, though that's going to become more of the idea, this more miraculous thing that God will intervene. But also this idea that you're following the rules that God set up. And those rules are, at least by this point, very clearly capitalism. So in the wake of these debates, what then remains of the traditional roles, the authority of the church in society? In particular, as these conversations about the disenchantment of religion are happening, at the same time, that the state is starting to step in and do some of the traditional things that the church did, like taking care of the poor. Then if the church starts to lose its, I don't want to say reason for existence, but some of the purpose that it has because of these changes in how people think about this. And if the church loses its main job, which is to, in society, which at this point is partially taking care of the poor, that community, then what happens to the authority of the church? And the answer is the church's authority becomes less and less and less. In fact, what's going to happen is we're going to start to bifurcate our lives into our public life and our private life. And the church belongs in the private life, but not in the public life. Separation of church and state, all that kind of stuff. At home, you can do what you want. In fact, it's a very important part of who you are. Just leave it out of here. And that's kind of the direction that heads. All right, that's it. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.